Every story must end, but some stories never truly die. Great Zimbabwe's walls may no longer hold kings, its markets may no longer echo with trade, and its valleys may no longer thunder with drums. Yet in silence, its stones still speak. For though kingdoms fall, their spirit endures, and though lies were written, the truth always returns. As we step into the final chapter of this story, we do not speak only of ruins. We speak of memory. We speak of identity. We speak of Africa, unbroken, enduring, and rising once again. Every kingdom rises, and every kingdom must one day face its fall. For centuries, Great Zimbabwe had flourished, its walls unbroken, its markets alive, its kings revered. But nothing in history lasts forever. The seeds of decline had already been sown, seeds that would one day bring silence to these stones. The land that had fed the kingdom began to strain. Cattle were wealth, but too many cattle stripped the grasslands bare. The soil, once fertile, weakened after centuries of harvest. Forests were cut to feed iron furnaces and fires, leaving the hills scarred. With each year it grew harder to feed the growing population. Fields yielded less, pastures thinned. People pushed further outward for survival. The very land that had given birth to Great Zimbabwe was being exhausted by its greatness. And as the land faltered, so too did unity. Kings of Great Zimbabwe had ruled with unquestioned power, but with pressure came dissent. Rival factions began to rise. Chiefs in distant lands questioned tribute. Ambitious men whispered of their own right to rule. Some left to build rival centers of stone. Among them were the builders of Kami to the west and Mapungubwe before them. Kingdoms that would inherit fragments of Zimbabwe's legacy. The great house of stone was no longer one. It was splintering. And then came the final blow. Trade shifted. For centuries, Zimbabwe's gold had flowed eastward through Sofala to the Indian Ocean, but new powers rose on the coast. Rival ports gained strength. Trade routes moved. Without control of gold, the kingdom's lifeblood weakened. Wealth no longer flowed as it once did. Foreign cloth, beads, and porcelain grew scarce. Great Zimbabwe was still magnificent, but its grip on the region had begun to slip. And so over time the valley emptied. Families left. Markets grew quiet. Drums no longer echoed through the night. The great enclosure still stood. The hill complex still rose. The soapstone birds still watched, but the people were gone. By the 16th century, the city of stone lay abandoned, not destroyed, not conquered, simply silent. Its walls remained, its spirit endured, but its heartbeat, the people had moved on. But the story of Great Zimbabwe did not end with silence. A new chapter began, one not written by its builders, but by outsiders. When European explorers first laid eyes on the ruins in the 19th century, they could not believe what they saw. Towering stone walls, carefully built without mortar, standing strong in the African savanna. They asked the same question we began with: who built this? But instead of seeking truth, they created lies. They claimed the Shona could not have built it. They whispered of Phoenicians, of Arabs, of the lost tribes of Israel. Anything but Africa, anything but black hands shaping stone. Why? Because to admit Africans built Great Zimbabwe was to admit Africa had civilizations equal to Europe. It was to admit Africa had greatness long before colonization. And so, they denied it. They buried it. They erased it. For decades, colonial powers silenced the truth. They banned Africans from claiming the ruins. They twisted history to justify conquest. They declared, "These stones are not yours," but the stones never lied. They stood as witness. They whispered in silence, "We are African. We are Zimbabwe. Today, the lies have crumbled. Archaeology, oral history, and memory have restored the truth. Great Zimbabwe was built by the Shona, by African hands, African minds, African spirit. Its walls stand as proof, undeniable, unshakable, unforgotten. No empire could erase it. No lie could bury it. The stones still speak, and they say, Africa was great. Africa is great. Africa will rise again. Though its people moved on, though centuries of silence covered its stones, Great Zimbabwe was never truly lost. It lived in the stories whispered by elders. It lived in the symbols carried across generations. It lived in the spirit of the Shona, waiting for the day its voice would rise again. In the ruins, archaeologists uncovered carved soapstone birds, guardians of the city, sacred emblems of kingship and spirit. These birds became more than relics. They became the very soul of a nation. Today, they soar once more, emblazoned on the flag of Zimbabwe, a reminder of greatness carved in stone. Symbols endure when empires fall, and these birds remind us, Africa remembers. In 1980, a new nation took its name from these ruins. Zimbabwe, the House of Stone. After years of colonial lies, the truth returned. The people reclaimed their history. The city of stone, once denied, became a banner of freedom. Great Zimbabwe had never been forgotten. Now, it became a promise that the past belongs to its people and the future belongs to those who rise. Great Zimbabwe is not just about the past, it is about the present. It reminds us that Africa was never a dark continent. It was never without history. It was never without greatness. From the Nile to Mali, from Axum to Zimbabwe, Africa built kingdoms, empires, and cities that touched the world. And today, Africa rises again. Cities grow, trade flows, and voices long silenced speak with power. The story of Great Zimbabwe is the story of Africa's endurance, a story of pride, resilience, and renewal. Great Zimbabwe rose, Great Zimbabwe fell, but Great Zimbabwe was never lost. It lives in the stones, it lives in the soil, it lives in the spirit of Africa. A city built without mortar, yet unbroken, a kingdom forgotten by colonizers, yet remembered by its people, a voice silenced, yet still echoing across time. The House of Stone still stands, and through it, Africa speaks. Great Zimbabwe, the full story. Subscribe for more untold African history. The story of Great Zimbabwe is the story of Africa, a story of strength, of endurance, of greatness carved in stone. But this is only one chapter in the vast history of our people. There are more kingdoms to uncover, more voices to restore, more truths to tell. If this journey moved you, help us keep history alive. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with others who need to know, and leave a comment. Your voice is part of this story too. Together, we bring Africa's history back to life. Together, we remember. Together, we rise.